for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. I'm Darren Gibson. Donald Trump may be facing court, but this time to keep him out of the presidential election. We'll tell you about that. Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro can be tried together. We'll tell you about the latest ruling by a Georgia judge. Also, Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys is going to prison for the next 20 or so years. We'll give you the details on that. A law recently signed by Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been declared unconstitutional. We'll give you the details of that. Plus, we have to talk about the impeachment trial of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Plus, we'll give you an update on the latest happenings of Ottawa County, Michigan. There's been a lot of things that have happened since our last episode. We'll give you all the details of that. Before we get started with today's topics, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on X, the former Twitter, at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube and Mastodon by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Podvine, and Pandora by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, YouTube, and Mastodon accounts. I should say X instead of Twitter. It's a force of habit. You can also listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern, and you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and WMTB St. Petersburg, Florida. So be sure to listen to us on your local Pacifica affiliate. We are recording the show on Wednesday, September 6, 2023. Several states have been looking into removing Donald Trump from the ballot in 2024 by using the 14th Amendment. California's been looking into it. I believe a couple of states on the East Coast have been looking into that as well. But now there's been a lawsuit. I have this story by Nicholas Riccardi from the Associated Press. This is dated September 6th out of Denver. A liberal group on Wednesday filed a lawsuit to bar Donald Trump from the primary ballot in Colorado, arguing he is ineligible to run for the White House again under a rarely used clause in the U.S. Constitution aimed at candidates who have supported an insurrection. The lawsuit, citing the 14th Amendment, is likely the initial step in a legal challenge that seems destined for the U.S. Supreme Court. The complaint was filed on behalf of 6 Republican and unaffiliated Colorado voters by the group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. It will jolt an already unsettled 2024 primary campaign that features the leading Republican candidate facing 4 separate criminal cases. Liberal groups have demanded that states' top election officials bar Trump under the clause that prohibits those who, quote, engaged in an insurrection or rebellion, end of quote, against the Constitution from holding higher office. None has taken that step, looking for guidance from the courts on how to interpret a clause that has only been used a handful of times since the 1860s. While a few fringe figures have filed thinly written lawsuits in a few states citing the clause, the litigation Wednesday was the first by an organization with significant legal resources. It may lead to similar challenges in other states, holding out the potential for conflicting rulings that would require the Supreme Court to settle. Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold, a Democrat, said in a statement that she hoped, quote, this case will provide guidance to election officials on Trump's eligibility as a candidate for office, end of quote. The lawsuit contends the case is clear, given the attempt by Trump to overturn his 2020 election loss to Democrat Joe Biden and his support for the assault of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Let me add traitorous assault, because those people are traitors, just like Enrique Tarrio is a traitor. We'll get to him in a little bit. Trump said that he has done nothing wrong in his actions. Really? Yeah. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, helped ensure civil rights for freed slaves and eventually for all people in the United States. But it was also used to prevent former Confederate officials from becoming members of Congress after the Civil War and taking over the government against which they had just rebelled. The clause cited in the lawsuit allows Congress to lift the ban, which it did in 1872, as the political will to continue to bar former Confederates dwindled. The provision was almost never used after that. Crew and law professors of both parties contend the amendment is clear and is a qualification for president, just as the Constitution's mandate that a candidate for the White House must be at least 35 years old and a natural-born citizen. But others note there's much unsettled about the provision and that a case involving this issue has not reached the justices in Washington. The clause cites presidential electors, but not presidents themselves, as being disqualified if they previously swore an oath to uphold the Constitution and then broke it. There is a debate among some experts about whether Trump's acts constitute an insurrection under the language of the amendment. In its complaint, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington asked the court to expedite the matter so it can be resolved before the state's primary ballot is set on January 5, 2024. Donald Sherman, Crew's chief counsel, told reporters in a teleconference, quote, "We understand that there's great interest in states across this country about this question, and it needs to be resolved expeditiously so there's clarity," end of quote. A Trump spokesman did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the lawsuit. The 14th Amendment was used last year to bar from office a New Mexico County commissioner who entered the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. That was the first time it was used in 100 years. In 1919, Congress refused to seat a socialist, contending he gave aid and comfort to the country's enemies during World War I. Another liberal group, Free Speech for People, unsuccessfully tried to use the provision to prevent Republican Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Madison Cawthorn of North Carolina from running for re-election last year. The judge overseeing Greene's case ruled in her favor. Cawthorn's case became moot after he was defeated in his primary. Crew said it expects to file more cases in other states and anticipates that other groups may do so as well. Its leader said that it picked Colorado because the state allows ballot challenges to go directly to court, and it assembled a prominent roster of plaintiffs, including a former Republican leader of both houses of the state legislature and a conservative columnist for the Denver Post. Sherman noted another reason. In 2015, a Guyana-born naturalized citizen lost his lawsuit to be included on the state's presidential primary ballot, failing to convince a federal magistrate that the Constitution's requirement that he be a natural-born citizen was unfair. A federal appeals judge upheld that ruling, barring him from the ballot. That judge was Neil Gorsuch, who is now on the U.S. Supreme Court. So there it is, folks. This could get real interesting real quick, and I hope it does. Speaking of Trump, we got more stories here. This is Kate Brumback writing for the Associated Press out of Atlanta. This is also dated September 6th. The judge overseeing the Georgia election subversion case involving Donald Trump on Wednesday denied requests by 2 of the 19 defendants to be tried alone, instead saying the pair would be tried together starting next month. Since lawyers Kenneth Chesebro and Sidney Powell both filed speedy trial demands, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee said their trial would begin October 23rd, but he seemed skeptical of prosecutors' arguments that all 19 defendants could be tried together that soon. The hearing provided some insight into how the case could play out. with prosecutors estimating a trial would take 4 months and that they'd call more than 150 witnesses. It was also broadcast live on television and on the judge's YouTube channel, a marked difference from the other 3 criminal cases against Trump where cameras have not been allowed in the courtroom during proceedings. Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, who provided the 4-month estimate, said that did not include jury selection and added that whether or not defendants chose to testify could affect timing. But he said he expects a trial to take that long regardless of how many defendants it includes, arguing that because the trial was brought under Georgia's anti-racketeering law, prosecutors would seek to prove the entire conspiracy against each defendant. In announcing the wide-ranging 41-count indictment last month, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis said she wants to try all 19 defendants together. But the legal maneuvering that has already begun in the 3 weeks since the indictment was returned underscores the logistical complexity inherent in such a sprawling indictment with so many defendants. Already, some of those charged are seeking to speed up the process by attempting to separate themselves from the others accused in the alleged conspiracy, while others are trying to move the charges against them from a state court to federal court. All of them have pleaded not guilty. The judge said he would try Chesebro and Powell together and adhere to an October 23 trial date already set for Chesebro to comply with their demands for a speedy trial. He gave prosecutors until Tuesday to submit a brief on whether it should be a trial of 2 defendants or 19. Lawyers for Chesebro and Powell argued separately that their clients don't know each other and are not accused in the indictment of having participated in the same acts. They said it would be like conducting 2 distinct trials at the same time and that the unrelated evidence against one of them could taint the other. Several other defendants have also asked to be tried separately or in small groups, and Trump has asked to be tried apart from anyone who files a speedy trial demand. Yet Trump's trying to push the goalpost on this one to 2026. Really, that's what he's trying to do. Meanwhile, Trump's former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows was in federal court last week arguing that he was acting in his capacity as a federal official and his case should be heard by a federal judge. Oh, really? U.S. District Judge Steve Jones has yet to rule on that request. 4 other defendants who are also seeking to move their cases to federal court have hearings set before Jones later this month. Whenever and wherever any trial in the case ultimately takes place, jury selection is likely to be a significant challenge. Jury selection in a racketeering and gang case brought last year by Willis began in January and is still ongoing. In another big racketeering case, Willis tried nearly a decade ago against former Atlanta Public Schools educators. It took 6 weeks to seat a jury. Willis's team on Tuesday asked McAfee to allow the use of a jury questionnaire that prospective jurors would have filled out before they show up for jury selection, writing in a court filing that it, quote, will facilitate and streamline the jury selection process in many respects, end of quote. Prospective jurors may be more comfortable answering personal questions on paper than in open court, and lawyers for both sides could agree that certain jurors aren't qualified without additional questioning, according to prosecutors. So, there you go. This process could take quite a while. 19 defendants. This is great stuff. Then there's another court case against Donald Trump. This is Jennifer Peltz writing for the Associated Press out of New York City. This is dated September 6th. 4 months after a civil trial jury found that Donald Trump sexually abused and defamed advice columnist E. Jean Carroll, a federal judge ruled Wednesday that still more of Trump's comments about her were libelous. The decision means that an upcoming second trial will concern only how much more he has to pay her. Trump's going to go bankrupt at this point if he isn't there already. I mean, he did use a bail bondsman to get out of jail in Atlanta. The ruling stands to streamline significantly the second trial set for January. It concerns remarks that Trump made in 2019 after Carroll first publicly claimed that he sexually attacked her in a dressing room after a chance meeting at a luxury department store in 1996. He denies that anything happened between them. Of course he did, because he's just as innocent as the pier-driven snow. I can't even believe that one. Yeah. The first trial this spring concerned the sexual assault allegation and whether some 2022 Trump comments were defamatory. Jurors awarded Carroll $5 million, finding that she was sexually abused, but rejecting her allegation that she was raped. In Wednesday's decision, U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan wrote, quote, "The jury considered and decided issues that are common to both cases, including whether Mr. Trump falsely accused Ms. Carroll of fabricating her sexual assault charge, and if that were so, that he did it with knowledge that this accusation was false," end of quote, "or acted with reckless disregard for the truth." The judge wrote that the substantive content of the 2019 and 2022 statements was the same. And when the jury found that Trump indeed sexually abused Carroll, it effectively established that his 2019 statements also were false and defamatory. Again, that's the judge's ruling. Carroll's lawyer, Roberta Kaplan, who is not related to the judge, said that Carroll and her other attorneys, quote, "look forward to trial limited to damages for the original defamatory statements Donald Trump made," end of quote. Trump lawyer Alina Habas said Wednesday that his legal team is confident that the jury verdict will be overturned, mooting the judge's new decision. Trump is also seeking to put the second trial on hold while waiting for an appeals court to rule on whether he's legally shielded from the yet-to-be-tried case. He claims immunity because he was president when he made the comments in 2019. Oh, now we're going to go for presidential immunity. Yeah. At least for now, the trial is set to start January 15th, the day of the Iowa Republican caucuses. The Carroll case is part of a lineup of legal woes that Trump is facing as he campaigns to return to the White House. And, of course, we've covered all of those. 4 criminal indictments accused Trump variously of trying to subvert the 2020 presidential election, which he lost to Democrat Joe Biden, mishandling top-secret documents and trying to conceal what he had done, and falsifying records in his business to cover up a hush money payment he made during his 2016 campaign to porn actress Stormy Daniels. She asserts they had a sexual encounter, which he denies. Some of Trump's criminal trials are scheduled to overlap with the presidential primary season. So is a civil trial in New York. Attorney General Letitia James's lawsuit accusing Trump and his company of defrauding banks, insurers, and others by inflating asset values and his net worth. Trump has denied the allegations, boasting that he is the hottest brand in the world, and accused the Democratic Attorney General of conducting a political vendetta. Really? Yeah. A judge on Wednesday refused to delay that trial set for October. Carroll initially sued Trump in 2019, saying he smeared her by saying she'd made a false allegation while trying to sell a new book and suggesting she might be a Democratic operative. Trump said at the time, quote, "The world should know what's really going on. It is a disgrace and people should pay dearly for such false accusations," end of quote. Hey, I agree with you there, and you're paying up now, aren't you, buddy? He maintained that he had never met Carroll, brushing off a 1987 photo of the two and their then spouses at a social event. While that case was playing out, Carroll sued again last year under a New York state law that waived the legal time limit for filing sexual assault allegations. That lawsuit, the one that went to trial last year, came to include claims that Trump defamed Carroll in 2022 by calling the case a complete con job and a scam. The suit over the 2019 statements remained separate. Trump, meanwhile, countered with a defamation suit against Carroll for saying after the verdict that she was not only sexually abused but raped. The judge dismissed Trump's suit last month. Rightfully so. So this just gets better and better for old Donnie Littlehands. He's going to be out a lot of money. And then, but the problem is he's got all these suckers paying up for all these shirts and other merchandise with his mugshot on it, which, by the way, that money might be going back to Fulton County, because guess who owns the copyright on the mugshot? Fulton County Sheriff's Department, not Donald Trump. Sorry, that's copyright law. Got news for you, folks. This is beautiful. All right, let's go down to Texas. Well, let's not. Let's just say we did. This is Katie Hawkinson writing for Business Insider. This is dated August 31st. Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, a Republican, signed a bill into law in June that prohibited cities from passing certain local ordinances. It was widely seen as an effort to curb the power of Democratic-led cities. A judge has now ruled that law unconstitutional. District Judge Maya Guerra Gamble of Texas announced the decision on Wednesday in response to a lawsuit from the city of Houston. Mayor Sylvester Turner of Houston wrote in a statement, quote, "I am thrilled that Houston, our legal department, and sister cities were able to obtain this victory for Texas cities. House Bill 2127 was a power grab by the legislature and an unwarranted and unconstitutional intrusion into local power granted to Houston and other cities," end of quote. Paige Willey, Director of Communications for the Office of the Attorney General, says that the office has appealed Gamble's decision. Willey wrote to Business Insider, quote, "While the judge declared House Bill 2127 unconstitutional, she did not enjoin enforcement of the law by Texans who are harmed by local ordinances, which HB 2127 preempts. The Office of the Attorney General has also immediately appealed because the ruling is incorrect. This will stay the effect of the court's declaration pending appeal. As a result, HB 2127 will go into effect on September 1, end of quote. The law even prevented ordinances that mandated things such as water breaks for construction workers, earning it the nickname the law that kills. Texas saw protests from construction workers and their allies who said that an end to local water break mandates would result in more incidents of heat-related illness and death. Well, at that point, the unions need to go out en masse, and I mean en masse, all of them, massive sit-down strike, general strike in the state of Texas. Let them bring the National Guard. You know what union workers will do? Go back to the 1930s when the UAW started cracking arms and breaking ribs using axe handles. Why do you think they got recognition? Union people are tough. And this should happen right on the heels of Labor Day, which we just celebrated in this country. In response to the decision, the Texas AFL-CIO posted this statement, quote, "This is a huge win for the working people of Texas, local governments, and local communities across our state. While we expect an appeal, it remains clear this law is an unacceptable infringement on the rights of Texans and cities," end of quote. Because it is. It really is, folks. Can you imagine that? You want to give your worker a water break, and you can't because the state says, oh, no, you can't do that. Unbelievable. All right, let's go to our next story here. Let's stay in Texas, unfortunately. This is Jake Bleiberg and Paul J. Weber writing for the Associated Press. This is dated September 6th out of Austin, Texas. This story has to do with the impeachment trial for Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton that is ongoing. So we're picking it up at this point. An extramarital affair Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton had with a donor's employee helped connect the dots about why the Republican was using his power in ways that are now at the center of his impeachment trial on accusations of corruption. That is according to testimony provided by a former top aide Wednesday. Jeff Mateer, who was Paxton's second in command at the Texas Attorney General's office, said, quote, "It answered that why question," end of quote. The account by Mateer, who went on to report Paxton to the FBI in 2020 over allegations of abuse of office, quickly injected an affair that Paxton has acknowledged to staff into the historic impeachment trial, the gravest threat to Paxton's political career after years of criminal charges and alleged scandal. At the center of the case are accusations that Texas's top lawyer wrongfully used his power to help Austin real estate developer Nate Paul, one of his political supporters who was under FBI investigation at the time and was indicted this summer on charges of making false statements to banks. On cross-examination, Paxton attorney Tony Busby did not delve into the affair, but waved off Paul's $25,000 campaign contribution as an unremarkable donation in Texas politics. He argued that Paxton intervened because his staff wasn't doing their job. Busby, a high-profile Houston attorney whose past clients have included former Texas Governor Rick Perry, said, quote, "Couldn't you see how maybe your boss might be frustrated?" End of quote. Paxton, who was not required to attend the proceedings in the Texas Senate, was again absent when Mateer took the stand as the first key witness in a trial that could last several weeks. Paxton's wife, State Senator Angela Paxton, is not allowed to vote in the trial and watched from her desk while Mateer testified. Oh, I bet that's going to be a nice little conversation at dinner tonight. What's this about this affair you were having? You cheating on me, you son of a bitch. I can just hear it. This is going to be beautiful. Oh, it'll be a fly on the wall in the Paxton household. More than 100 people have been identified as potential witnesses for the trial, according to a list obtained by the Associated Press. They include the woman with whom Paxton had the affair, but it is unclear whether she or others on the list will testify. I hope she does. I really hope she does. And just to rub it in a little bit more into his wife, just show up dressed to the nines and just, I'm sorry. I have no sympathy for Republicans. Zero. Because that's the exact amount of sympathy they have for me. Zero. By starting with Mateer, Republican impeachment managers opened their case with one of the closest members of Paxton's former inner circle. But they also put forth the first witness with firm conservative credentials before a jury of mostly Republican senators. Mateer, a Christian conservative lawyer, was once nominated by Donald Trump for a federal judgeship. Paxton has argued that the impeachment is politically motivated and driven by members of the Republican Party who are rhinos, meaning Republicans in name only. The Republican-led House voted 121-23 to impeach Paxton in May, with the 20 articles of impeachment including abuse of public trust, unfitness for office, and bribery. The vote immediately suspended Paxton and made him only the third sitting official in Texas's nearly 200-year history to be impeached. A two-thirds majority, or 21 senators, is required for conviction, meaning that if all 12 Democrats vote against Paxton, at least 9 Republicans would have to join them. According to Mateer, he and other senior staff under Paxton had grown increasingly concerned as their boss began taking what appeared to be a personal interest in Paul's claims that he had been unjustly targeted by the FBI. He said they became particularly troubled when Paxton hired an inexperienced outside lawyer to look into Paul's accusations that appeared baseless. Mateer said he struggled to understand why Paxton was helping Paul, but that upon learning about the continued affair, the situation became clearer in his mind. He said he and other staff members, including 7 other whistleblowers who also went to the FBI, tried to help Paxton, but to no avail. Mateer said, quote, "We couldn't protect him because he didn't want to be protected." End of quote. How much Paxton will take part in Texas's first impeachment trial in nearly a half-century is up in the air. Paxton left the proceedings early and cannot be compelled to testify. Paxton posted this on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Tuesday. Quote, "I want to thank you all for your prayers and support. I will never back down for defending freedom." End of quote. How about your affair there, buddy? You going to defend that? On Tuesday, dozens of Paxton supporters came to watch the start of the proceedings, some of whom traveled hundreds of miles. But on Wednesday, many rows in the Senate gallery were bare as the trial resumed. For years, many Texas Republicans have resisted criticizing or facing head-on the litany of legal trouble surrounding Paxton, who has remained popular among the hard right by aligning himself closely to Trump and rushing his office into lawsuits that have halted priorities of the Biden administration. Yeah, because the butter on the right side of the bread goes both ways. Paxton knows that if he sticks with Trump, that he can do anything he wants, and people are just going to continue to love him and eat his crap. That's really all that it is, folks. It really is. To paraphrase Vince McMahon, Hope you folks in Texas really like the taste of Paxton pal. There you go. That's all that it is. All right, let's go ahead. I want to get to this story. This hasn't been nearly covered enough by the mainstream media, but I'm going to get to this right now. This is Piper Hudspeth Blackburn writing for CNN. This is dated Monday, August 28th. Folks, lift up your glass and toast. Joe the Plumber is dead. Dead. D-E-A-D, dead. I'm going to celebrate. Samuel Joseph Wurzelbacher, who became known as Joe the Plumber after pushing then-Senator Barack Obama on his economic policies during the 2008 presidential campaign, has died, according to his family. He was 49 years old. In a statement provided to CNN, his wife Katie said, quote, "When I met Joe, he was already known by everyone else as Joe the Plumber, but he wrote something to me that stood out and showed me who he truly was. Just Joe. He was an average, honorable man trying to do great things for the country he loved so deeply after being thrust into the public eye for asking a question." End of quote. Yeah, no, he was an average jerk. It's about what it was. She continues in her statement, quote, "My heart goes out to everyone whose lives are impacted by cancer. There are so many ups and downs, but we've tried to find joy in every day. He fought long and hard, but is now free from pain." End of quote. In July, Wurzelbacher reflected on his pancreatic cancer diagnosis, his family, and his faith in an interview with Glenn Beck, saying, quote, "You can take strength from God and know that there are a lot more good people out there than bad. You know, we have some differences out there, but ultimately people want to do good things, and that's been incredible to see." End of quote. He is survived by his wife and 4 children. His oldest son, Joey, remembered his father as a man of faith and someone who believed in the country. He said Monday, quote, "He wanted a united America. Of course, he had his views on that. But look, we live in a wonderful republic where, those views helped cultivate something amazing." End of quote. Oh, really? No, what is cultivated is hate. Hate driven by the right. Period. End of story. And now you're going to get the hate back in spades. "Oh, but Darren, you need to take the high road." No, I don't. No, I do not need to take the high road. This is my show. It has been my show since 2012, actually since 2010 when I started podcasting. This is my views. I don't need to defend the other side. They've got a lot more programming out there than progressives ever will. So there you go. You take your high road and you can stick it. In 2008, Wurzelbacher emerged as the face of the struggling middle class on the campaign trail in Ohio when he challenged Obama over what he would do for small businesses and taxes. In the now well-known exchange as Obama campaigned door-to-door in Holland, Ohio, Wurzelbacher said he was looking to buy the plumbing company he was working for and asked whether the Democrat believed in the American dream. Well, we know what George Carlin said about the American dream. You got to be asleep to believe it. As CNN reported at the time, Wurzelbacher's name would be invoked in whole or in part more than 24 times during the final presidential debate between Obama and the late Senator John McCain, who at the time was the Republican nominee. Wurzelbacher went on to run for the U.S. House of Representatives in Ohio's 9th District in 2012, clinching the Republican nomination before losing to Democrat Marcy Kaptur. Asked at the time about his role in McCain's campaign 4 years earlier, Wurzelbacher told CNN, quote, "Well, I don't know so much as John McCain's secret weapon. There was no interaction between us. I just happened to be tossing a football with my son. I wanted to buy a business, and when it came down to the principle of the matter, I don't think the federal government gets to decide who's rich and who's not." End of quote. Well, the problem is that the rich own the federal government, so there's the problem. It's the owners of this country that are the problem, and Joe the Plumber was too stupid to realize it. The problem is not people wanting to get rich, it's the rich themselves. It's not people that are struggling that are the problem. It's the rich. It is the class warfare in this country. The oligarchs, as Bernie Sanders calls them, the wealthiest people in the country, the people like Elon Musk, like Mark Zuckerberg, like Bezos, Warren Buffett, all of them need to be boiled and eaten. Boil them and eat them. Eat the rich. The one I'd like to get, I wish I had time for douchebag of the week. Maybe next week. Here's a spoiler for next week. Bill Maher, douchebag of the week next week. So there you go. We'll tell you about that on next week's show. Joey Wurzelbacher said that following his time in politics, his dad returned to, quote, serving the people of America again, doing his trade, doing his craft, and doing it well, end of quote. Well, if he wasn't in a union, he probably wasn't that great. So there you go. Good riddance to Wurzelbacher. Yeah, bye-bye. Sorry, I have no sympathy. I really don't have any sympathy whatsoever. My sympathy went away years and years ago when Donald Trump ran for office, that violent son of a bitch, and he got all of his acolytes and all of his sycophants that are just as violent as he is. My sympathy went away a long time ago. If you don't like it, that's just tough. Turn the channel. You don't have to listen to this show. Something else I want to get off my chest here since we're talking about it. Let's get to our next story. This is Tom Krischer writing for the Associated Press. This is dated September 6th out of Detroit, Michigan. The head of the United Auto Workers warned Wednesday that the union plans to go on strike against any Detroit automaker that hasn't reached a new agreement by the time contracts expire next week. President Shawn Fain responded when asked if the union would strike any of the companies that haven't reached a tentative deal by the time their national contract ends. Quote, "That's the plan," end of quote. And I tell you what, I'm going to go a step further. President Biden needs to keep his nose out of it. Do not intervene in the UAW strike, because if you do, you're going to lose votes. You're going to lose a lot of union votes, and I'm going to be one of them. You've been warned. Don't interfere in the unions. A strike against all three major automakers, General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford, could cause damage not only to the industry as a whole, but also to the Midwest and even national economy, depending on how long it lasted. This country's been through auto strikes before. It'll get through them again. This is a bunch of propaganda bullshit. Oh, they're going to hurt the economy. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. The auto industry accounts for about 3% of the nation's economic output. A prolonged strike could also lead eventually to higher vehicle prices. You mean even higher than what they are now? $90,000 for a brand new pickup truck that 5 years ago cost $30,000 on the lot? That's not because of strikes. It's not because of anything except greed. Corporate greed by rich people. In an interview with the Associated Press, Fain left open the possibility of avoiding a strike. He acknowledged more explicitly than he has before that the union will have to give up some of its demands to reach agreements. Contracts with the three companies will all expire at 11:59 p.m. September 14th. He said, quote, "There's a lot of back and forth in bargaining, and naturally, when you go into bargaining, you don't always get everything you demand. Our workers have high expectations. We made a lot of sacrifices going back to the economic recession," end of quote. In the interview, Fain did report some progress in the negotiations, saying the union will meet Thursday with General Motors to hear the company's response to the UAW's economic demands. In addition, discussions are underway with Ford on wages and benefits. Stellantis, formerly Fiat Chrysler, has yet to make a counteroffer on wage and benefit demands. Stellantis declined to comment Wednesday. General Motors confirmed that it would meet Thursday with union representatives but would not comment any further. Last week, the union filed charges of unfair labor practices against Stellantis and GM and said Ford's economic offer fell far short of its demands. Merrick Masters, a business professor at Wayne State University in Detroit, said he thought Fain's latest remarks suggest, quote, that he is opening up to the realities of bargaining, end of quote, as the strike deadline nears. Masters added, quote, as you get close to the deadline, you begin to realize the importance of trying to resolve a problem rather than make a point. Strikes are painful, especially for workers and also for companies, end of quote. But yeah, they're necessary. That's the thing. And that's the thing that unions have forgotten over the last 40 years. Strikes are necessary, especially when you got wealth inequality the way we do in this country. Masters said that Fain's willingness to acknowledge publicly that he isn't going to achieve all the union's demands shows that there's more flexibility in his approach than previously thought. Masters added that some signs of movement and negotiations have emerged, raising the possibility that an agreement might be reached with one automaker that would set the pattern for the others, and that's typically what's happened in the past. Once one auto manufacturer settles with the UAW, then the others fall in line and usually take the same deal. He said, quote, I think if they can avoid having to go out on strike and the pain that occurs and still get a very good bargain, I think they'll be better off, end of quote. The union's demands include a 46% across-the-board pay raises, a 32-hour week with 40 hours of pay, restoration of traditional pensions for new hires, union representation of workers at new battery plants, and a restoration of traditional pensions. Top-scale UAW assembly plant workers make about $32 an hour plus annual profit-sharing checks. In his remarks to the Associated Press, Fain argued that worker pay isn't what's driven up vehicle prices. The average price of a new car has leaped to more than $48,000 on average, in part because of still scarce supplies resulting from a global shortage of computer chips. He said, quote, in the last 4 years, the price of vehicles went up 30%, our wages went up 6%. There were billions of dollars in shareholder dividends, so our wages aren't the problem, end of quote. Yeah, he's got that right. While saying a strike by up to 146,000 members against all three automakers is a real possibility, Fain said the union doesn't want a strike and would prefer to reach new contracts with them. Yep, but sometimes it's necessary to go ahead and strike just to show them that they're serious. They really need to do that. Speaking of seriousness, let's get to our next couple of stories about the latest happenings in Ottawa County, Michigan. I have this story first. This is Mitchell Boatman and Sarah Leach writing for the Holland Sentinel. This is dated September 6th. By the way, we should congratulate Sarah Leach, the editor of the Holland Sentinel. She is being nominated for a Pulitzer Award for her reporting on Ottawa Impact. Months after a public split with Ottawa Impact and being censured by members of the group of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners, Jacob Bonnema was removed from a committee leadership role Tuesday. Members of the board's Finance and Administration Committee voted to remove Bonnema as the committee's vice chair and replace him with Roger Belknap, an Ottawa Impact commissioner. The vote comes nearly 6 months after Bonnema split with Ottawa Impact, citing differing views in governance, transparency, and policy between himself and the far-right fundamentalist group that helped him get elected last fall. In June, the board voted 6-5 to censure Bonnema, with the 6 remaining OI-affiliated commissioners, Chair Joe Moss, Vice Chair Sylvia Rodea, Belknap, Gretchen Cosby, Allison Miedema, and Lucy Ebel voting yes. When Bonnema was censured, the suggested discipline was to remove him from his committee assignments, which Moss said he didn't plan to pursue. Committee assignments are at the discretion of Moss as board chair. Tuesday's vote passed 5-3 with Belknap abstaining. Moss, Rodea, Ebel, Cosby, and Miedema voted yes. Bonnema, Doug Zylstra, and Roger Bergman voted no. Rebecca Curran left earlier in the meeting. Kyle Terpstra is the lone commissioner not on the committee. Bergman said the motion to change vice chairs with 3 months left in the year was highly irregular and saw absolutely no reason for the move. Cosby said it was discussed during the censure in June and as a result of that action, but Moss claimed the move was unrelated. He said, quote, for me, this is not related to the censure. That was a couple of months ago. I have my different reasons for it. In my mind, this is separate. I'd say I trust Commissioner Belknap to lead this committee if the chair is not available. End of quote. Really? No, it's punishment. It really is. Zylstra expressed concern that by making Belknap vice chair, all 15 leadership positions among the board and its committees will be held by just 6 members, all of whom comprise the OI majority. Bonnema said the motion was made in retaliation for a complaint he filed in March after a verbal altercation with County Administrator Whale Feces, John Gibbs, during which Whale Feces told Bonnema to get out of my face. The exchange was overheard by a reporter from WZZM, which reported on the incident the same day. 2 weeks later, Bonnema requested Human Resources Director Marcy Verbeek open a disciplinary investigation into Whale Feces after what Bonnema described as a threatening outburst. Verbeek, in a written response to Bonnema, said the evidence gathered during the investigation did not substantiate the claim of harassment and said, quote, the findings indicate there was no violation of our organization's harassment policy or any applicable laws, end of quote. The county Republican Party quickly censured Bonnema, stripping him of his voting rights for the next 6 meetings. He's a member of the party's executive committee. Moss and the OI-led board followed suit days later. Bonnema said Tuesday, quote, once again, Commissioner Moss and Administrator Whale Feces are taking action against me with the intention of removing a voice of reason from the Ottawa County Finance Committee. This is cowardly, vindictive, and likely unlawful. Once again, Commissioner Moss is retaliating against a human resources complaint that I filed against Whale Feces for denying information to county commissioners for weeks. His response was a blatantly insubordinate outburst at me in public after I politely asked him for the status of Nate Kelly's application, to which he yelled, "Get out of my face, dude," twice. End of quote. Bonnema called Moss's actions and statements petty and immature, saying Moss is hypocritical in his positions. Referring to the contract OI-backed candidates were required to sign to receive funding and support, Bonnema said, quote, Joe, you're always talking about how the media attacks conservatives, but you are the first in line attacking conservatives, specifically those who signed the contract with Ottawa Impact, something you threw away months ago, end of quote. He added, quote, your word is as useless as the paper it's ever printed on, Mr. Moss, end of quote. Bonnema also criticized Moss's self-created journalism website, Simply American, which features OI-friendly content written under pseudonyms. Bonnema said, quote, you ruin your reputation as a serious person with your name-calling, bullying, incompetent hiring, and creation and promotion of a divisive online blog that you personally own and control. You call it journalism, but it's self-aggrandizing, rambling, incoherent nonsense. It is a website filled with cowardice, stealing the names of real patriots to obscure your identity. That isn't brave conservatism, it's cowardice. End of quote. Beautiful. They're violating the 11th commandment. I love it. Thou shalt never speak ill of another Republican. After Bonnema spoke, Cosby says she witnessed the event referenced in Bonnema's human resources complaint and wasn't contacted. She said that makes her, quote, not trust him as my vice chair, end of quote. Moss said the move had, quote, nothing to do with retaliation, and yeah. It has nothing to do with cruelty or being vindictive. I think it has to deal with a pattern of behavior. End of quote. Yeah. Yeah, if he wants to look at behavior, he needs to look in the mirror. Big time. Big time. Let's go ahead and stick with Ottawa County again for our final story. This is Sarah Leach and Mitchell Boatman writing for the Holland Sentinel. This is dated September 5th. Health Officer Adeline Hambley said her department's proposed annual budget that she did not help create is larger than first suggested by Ottawa County Board Chair Joe Moss, but deep cuts to individual programs will still put services at risk. Hambley is locked in litigation with the board as Moss and his handpicked administrator, Whale Feces, attempt to cut as much funding from the health department as the state will allow. She sued commissioners in February, claiming the board's OI majority repeatedly interfered with her ability to do her job and overreached their authority by attempting to limit her state-authorized health duties. Last week, Hambly asked the Michigan Court of Appeals to intervene, saying that moss and whale feces appear to be making a strategic, albeit rushed case to legally fire her. Whale feces ordered Hambly to attend Tuesday's Finance and Administration Committee meeting, although he didn't say why. The Court of Appeals has scheduled a hearing for October 11th. Just after the finance meeting concluded, the Court of Appeals issued an order denying Hambly's request, saying the request was already considered earlier. However, the court added, quote, all the parties are cautioned that they proceed at their own peril if they take substantial actions before this court hears oral arguments on October 11, 2023, and subsequently issues an opinion resolving the issues presented in defendant's application for leave to appeal, end of quote. Hambly's attorney, Sarah Riley Howard, wrote in her filing to the court that moss and whale feces committed, quote, new unlawful acts of retaliation, end of quote, including locking Hambly and her staff out of the health department's social media accounts and cutting them out of the budget process, which is expected to be finalized later this month. On Tuesday morning, David Kallman of Kallman Legal Group responded to Hambly's filing, saying he needed more time to respond and calling Hambly's new claim meritless. Yeah, this is what I think about it. Kallman wrote to the court clerk, quote, we were served with this motion at 3:58 p.m. last Friday afternoon before the Labor Day weekend. We have not even been given 2 business hours to respond to this frivolous second attempt at the same motion previously denied by the court. Appellee's ridiculous fears are completely unfounded, as she is not being terminated from her job today as she falsely claims, end of quote. Yeah. During Tuesday's meeting, whale feces provided an overview of the new proposed budget. A copy of the budget was not included in the meeting packet, nor was it provided to commissioners, according to Doug Zylstra, who's a commissioner. Zylstra said it was lamentable that the information was not provided and asked whale feces when commissioners would see the budget. Whale feces declined to provide a specific date, only saying that commissioners would receive the budget with time to review. And, yeah, time to review my ass. Commissioners asked several questions of Hambly, but Chair Gretchen Cosby first swore Hambly in to give testimony under oath. Zylstra questioned the process, but Cosby cited Michigan law, claiming the board can have a department head give a report under oath. Oh, I'd like to see where that's written. Gretchen Cosby is nothing but another sycophant of whale feces. Following a handful of questions, Howard, present at the meeting, asked for a recess to speak with Hambly about providing testimony under oath, as neither was aware that would be requested prior to the meeting. During the questioning, Moss said that by no means had any budgets been finalized in recent weeks. Hambly responded by saying, quote, that's good to hear because it has not felt or seemed like a discussion to this point, end of quote. Whale feces reported Tuesday the new proposed budget is a 22% increase in comparison to the 2019 budget, the last prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. He said the initial budget from the health department was 53% higher than 2019. Whale feces said in comparison to this year's budget, the new proposal is down about 9%. No, it's not. It's more than that. God. He can't even do math. Whale feces said Ottawa County's inflation rate is lower than the 22% budget increase and said the county's population has grown 4.5% since 2019, referencing arguments that cutting the budget to 2019 levels doesn't account for inflation and population growth. Moss asked Hambly if she was aware of several pieces of this year's budget timeline and process. He then asked why, in a thread about budget cuts posted on X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, the department tagged organizations such as the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the Michigan Attorney General, and NACCHO. After counseling with Howard, Hambly said those organizations have an interest in the department's funding. Moss asked what Hambly was looking for those organizations to do, to which Hambly said she wanted them to be aware of the situation. Cosby mentioned a previous request for information on employees' program usage and visits that she claims she didn't receive. Cosby said she requested that information in order to, quote, defend the public health department, end of quote. Oh, really? No, you mean you want to gut the Department of Public Health, you lying Hambly said she couldn't provide the information in a timely manner because the budget cuts received by whale feces took priority. Cosby also asked Hambly about statements provided to media outlets, including local TV affiliate WXMI and the Holland Sentinel. She didn't indicate why she was asking, but had printed versions of articles submitted to the clerk for the record. Commissioner Jacob Bonnema said he's had several meetings with Hambly since being elected to discuss health department business and asked Hambly if other commissioners have done the same. Hambly says she's offered, but none have come to visit the department. Bonnema said, quote, I think that speaks for itself, end of quote. There were no votes taken on the proposed health department budget during Tuesday's meeting. Here are some of the programs that are scheduled to be cut. These are considered essential local public health service or other state-mandated services. Here's what they are. Among those, immunizations cut from $248,543 to $65,000. Sexually transmitted disease prevention and treatment from $168,091 to $74,646. Communicable disease control from $888,606 to $440,531. Family planning from $712,774 to $455,292. Health education, including state-mandated programs like suicide prevention, substance use disorder prevention, and food assistance, from $778,234 to $385,090. Mandated public health emergency preparedness and environmental health services also cut. Those are the essential ones. Two more programs cut. Miles of Smiles dental assistance cut from $534,867 to $391,231. The last one, Medicaid outreach, from $368,000 to $279,057. These are programs, according to Hambly, that make residents healthier and save money in the long run. But again, this isn't about money. This is about control of the public health department by a bunch of conservatives that don't know what they're doing. That's it for this week. I'm Darren Gibson. Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.